Good evening, everyone. My name is Umakanth Ravirala. I'm a QA manager at Elsevier. I work in Oxford. Before we go into any of my talk, I just wanted to see how many managers or leads we have in this gathering today. So, good, good. So, I think probably you guys are pretty aware of what I'm talking. It's our experience, our journey through Agile, and what we have done in order to achieve better results. So, just quick one. This is our company. Elsevier is an information and analytics company providing healthcare, science, technological information to scientific research professionals, universities, students, and across the globe. We are part of a bigger group, Relax Group, and we have customers all over the globe and offices across 40 countries. Let's just talk through what are we going to talk today evening. Just what is quality management exactly, and what are the common myths we have seen in our transformation, and how did we achieve that? What was our vision, and what are the key challenges we have seen, and how did we achieve? How did we address those challenges? And just a few summary points which, if you think you can take away, because I'm not saying this you can apply directly into your organization. It's completely subjective to your work environment. Right, so this was our traditional ways of working. When you're working in a waterfall model, this is the way how people used to work. Everyone loved it because you had a very good structurally defined entry point, exit point for every phase, and you have a lot of reviews everywhere and so on. So you define accountability. If something goes wrong, you know who to blame, queue manager, right? These are current world, how we are working. So the requirements are changing constantly. Constrained timelines and budgets all the time. I'm sure everyone who is hiring knows about this one. You have limited numbers and you need to achieve your goals. And the gap in the skill set. So you always find challenging to find better or automation engineers or quality engineers who are really good into your ways of working. So it's always a tricky way how you get right skilled people into your team. So quality assurance is an old term. Now we are moving towards quality engineering. We want to build products right from the beginning, a quality product right from the beginning. When I say quality engineering, you embed that quality culture into your ways of development. So that's where we want to go into quality engineering. So the first thing, when we looked at our Agile transformation, no matter what ways of working, so whether you select Scrum or Kanban, DSDM or SAFe, any sort of Agile, the first thing they say is, oh, we are Agile. The Agile books do not say you need to have a test manager role in a big organization. So every Agile says you need to have a business product owner, QA, and a developer. But there's no talk about a QA manager or quality owner who is responsible for end-to-end quality, who is accountable. I know we say everyone is responsible for quality or everyone is owner of quality, but how does it work in real time? We all know that pain. And the next one is quality engineer. We are Agile and we love cross-functional teams. So people generally take these cross-functional teams as incorrectly and say anybody can do quality work. So quality engineer is not just testing the product. Quality engineer brings that quality culture into the team. Looking at requirements, looking at acceptance criteria, looking at your business outcome, what is the value your user story or a requirement is going to provide to your customers. So that comes from a proper quality engineer. I'm not saying developers or any other would do that, but it is the blend of quality engineer where they look at business outcome, value of quality. So at Elsevier, what we have done is to address these challenges, we've allocated quality leads across various departments who are building up the strategy, making sure they own the quality in collaboration with the Agile squads. So we work on a large-scale Agile teams where multiple 15 to 20 teams work on the same business outcome. So how do you make sure when you have 15 to 20 teams working on a single product or a single business objective, you are not missing any end-to-end functionality, or you're not missing any end-to-end business outcome. That is where we built in quality leads, and we embedded quality engineers into the teams, Agile teams. So every Agile team, we make sure at least we have a proportion quality engineer by mindset. So if we don't have quality engineers, we make sure they follow the process, they follow the guidelines of quality which are set by the quality lead of that particular department, so that we maintain that quality across the teams. And the next one is, again, documentation in terms of quality. People generally say, yeah, we are Agile, we don't need documentation. It is, I've seen again and again, people just say enough documentation is necessary, but when you want to refer back, you don't see anything. So the best example, based on my experience, I bumped into a guy who I worked almost 7 years ago, and I heard the knowledge transition document which I prepared is still on the top references for a complex financial system. So the importance of documentation is always giving you that background. Any person who is joining your team as a new member would be able to refer to the documentation and understand the business flows. So technology is the next aspect, but if you want to work as a quality engineer, you need to understand your business, you need to understand your functionality outcome of the business. So that is very important. So what we have done to address this is, we didn't want to bore our quality engineers and developers to do 100-page document nobody's going to read it. So we use Confluence, and the quality documentation is a simple, straightforward bullet points, and people follow this so that it's easy to refer. We are focusing on only what is necessary. I know there are standard templates of IEEE, test plans and so on, but we don't use all of this. A lot of test plans we see every section not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. It doesn't make any sense. So we've said, yep, dump it, and we come up with what is really necessary for our teams and who are going to refer everything. What is the quality acceptance criteria? What are the test phases? What are the automation tools? What are the business outcomes, UAT, and so on? So that's way we have a focused documentation and what is really necessary for the teams. Right, the next one, Paul just talked about automation. I've seen a lot of companies taking automation in a wrong way. Right. Just teams want to do automation because boss said so, or my company wants so. How do you make sure your automation is actually giving you the right outcome, right? So that is very important. If you're doing this kind of maintaining automation for the sake of automation, it's of no use of anybody's time. It's not giving you any value to your company. It's not better use of your engineers' time. So make sure you use your automation in a way that it gives you your business outcome in a proper way. And it reduces human effort rather than just making automation for the sake of automation. So what we have done in our organization, as I said, our organization is almost 200 years old company. So we have systems built, legacy systems. We still run some systems on AS400 and we run cloud systems. So we have a diverse technological landscape. How do you make sure automation is serving purpose of these different technologies, right? There is no tool in the market would serve me end to end. No matter what tool you choose, HP products or any other product would not give me end-to-end testing coverage. How do you address these challenges? All right. So we have so much of ETL process which we run. We collect data from 100-odd systems on a day-to-day basis for our publishers, editors, universities, scientists, students, and everyone. How do you test that ETL process? Right. We built in all open source tools, open source frameworks to test different layers of our automation or systems. So database, we use, if you look at the technologies, we use Cucumber as an outline, and then we build Java. Again, important thing is programming languages for automation testing. I always recommend to use what your developers or your organization is using so that it's always easy to review your test code. So if you, as a tester or a QA engineer, if you use some fancy automation language or a programming language, which your developers are not aware, how do you make sure your code is correct? So if you want your developer or another team member to review your code, they have no clue what you've written. So it's always having that sync, always having that end-to-end integrity is important when you're choosing your automation tools. Don't just choose an automation tool which is fancy or somebody said so. And we use a lot of microservice architecture and we built in automation framework specifically for testing microservices, APIs, web services, and so on. And UI is a standard. We used open source tools again. We didn't want to spend a lot of commercial tools into our organization because it's not, I mean, commercial tools are really great, but are they really helping us to achieve what we want to achieve in the better way? So that is what the outcome or the underlying principle of automation. The next important thing is, metrics. So when we say metrics, the first thing is Agile teams come up with, we run our retrospective meetings and we follow what we have done better, what we have not done better, and we want to improve that. But is it really helping you guys to deliver in a better way, or is it really helping you guys to improve your delivery? And again, I looked at various teams measuring so many things, right? So many metrics, which are kind of number of lines of code, number of tests running, builds, number of builds running every night, and so on. But as a QA manager, or say as a senior manager, how does it tell me story of your team's delivery? If you tell to your CTO saying we're running 1,000 tests every night, does it give any business value? So that's where, when it comes to metrics, don't end up, there are a lot of myths that people measure number of tests pass every night, fail every night, and so on. So what we have done differently is we use various tools for our day-to-day working, Jira for day-to-day work management, Jenkins for our builds. We use a tool called Fresh Service for production incidents, and we use SonarQube for our code quality, coverage, check marks for security, scanning, and so on. So as a management layer, how do I make sure my teams are doing in a better way? If I want to see that, I need to log into Jira, I need to log into Jenkins, I need to log into SonarQube, and so on. So we used APIs which are available in Jira and SonarQube and all of these other tools. And we pulled all the data into a Postgres database, and then we plugged into Tableau dashboard. So that's telling me a good story of every team, how they are doing in terms of user stories, what are the different defects or issues they are finding, what are the production incidents they are seeing on a day-to-day basis, and how their builds are doing. So after multiple iterations, we came up with this list of metrics which are really telling a story which will drive improvements. So if I see any fall in the velocity, I can clearly see what happened. So that's making management team to ask the right questions to drive your teams into the right direction. And if I see, so this is one best example, how these metrics drove improvements into our teams. So we found that we're finding defects in a lot of UAT defects. So how the management team asked, why are we finding a lot of UAT defects? The UAT should be a tick in the box exercise. So there was right focus given and improve test coverage in SIT so that we don't find a lot of issues in UAT and production. So this is what you want to use metrics for. You want to drive improvements, not just sake of measuring metrics. And again, this one is, why are we seeing a lot of incidents in production? How can we move that towards left? So it's shift left, fancy term everyone uses. Yeah. So the recommendation, what I would say is identify the key metrics that really drive improvement into your teams, not just for the sake of measuring. And also don't spend a lot of time measuring these metrics. Use any tool that is integrating all of these, or build your own thing. I've seen a lot of companies building their own metrics using APIs and putting into Excel sheet or putting into an UI something. So it's whatever works for you. So we are now going with a tool called Plandeck, which is connecting to Jira, SonarQube, and everything, and bringing up all of those measures. So that's again helping us to look at the issues and drive improvements. And Again, when you find some improvement, so if you find a lot of issues here, how do you make sure you achieve those improvements? Not just saying, yeah, we have found a lot of UAT defects, let's reduce that. So take an action, agree that as a plan, build that into your team, and see that improvement and measure again. So that's where, if you look at your cycle of plan, test, check, and replan. So that's how you need to use metrics for your real improvements. So again, when I started with Elsevier, I looked at the quality strategy. I didn't want to, I'm not a great fan of so much of documentation. So I wanted to make a very simple vision of quality to all Agile teams where I work. Said, guys, this is my vision on quality, how we want to achieve quality. I didn't want to write a 100-page document nobody reads. So one pager, clearly focus what we want to do. We want to test from the beginning. That includes your requirements as well. Make sure your requirements are good enough, your user stories are good enough, and test as much as possible, test as fast as possible, and all of the good practices. And collaborate with teams is really important. Make QE part of Agile squad. So when I said make QE part of Agile squad, there are challenges on depending on your organization structure. You need to make sure you have that quality mindset in your Agile teams. It's not just bringing a quality engineer and putting into the team. It's the driving that quality measures. And this improve the transparency is really important. So the dashboard which we prepared was giving transparency. So it is displayed in the common areas. Everyone in the organization can see what's going on with the different teams. So that is really important. And cost-effective and optimized tool set. So when you're looking at enterprise level Agile projects, this is always challenging. So the best example is Elsevier used to have HPALM for defect test management and Jira for work management. And there was another tool to sync these two. So we have one tool, Jira, we have one tool ALM, and there was another tool to sync defects and user stories. So we have taken a strategic decision saying, guys, ALM is really great tool, but are we using all the features of ALM in our area? The answer was no. Then do we really need to use ALM for our test management purpose? So we went with the Zephyr on Jira. So that is giving us end-to-end traceability of user story, test, and defects when we are testing manually. So that's how you need to approach, depending on, it's all completely subjective, what works for you. And the improve and look ahead is measuring how your teams are doing. It's not about, the important thing is these measures are not to compare team to team. You cannot say team A is doing 50 story points, team B you should do 50 story points. That's not how we measure metrics. So we use these metrics to drive in the team improvements, not to compare 2-3 teams saying, you're only finding 2 defects and why are you finding 5 defects? It's not, there is danger of misusing metrics, so be careful. Use the metrics in the right direction or to drive improvements in your organization. So as part of this transformation, what are the challenges we faced and how did we address? So the first thing is, as I said, our organization is almost 2 centuries old. We have diverse teams working, diverse stakeholders who are with the company for 40 years and graduates. So how do you build that working nature, collaborative working among these teams? That's very important. As a QA engineer, it was really important for me to make sure all stakeholders are involved in the delivery. When I say all stakeholders, whoever is writing user story or the business owner is aware what he's expecting. And also I always make sure business owner or business product owner is not just getting what he wants or what she wants. I recommend what they need for their business. So it's it comes with your business knowledge as a QA engineer or QA manager. So that's very important. And again, lack of end-to-end business process, because as I said, we collect data from so many systems every day and we process that data and we give it to our stakeholders, scientists, research scholars, students, universities, pharma companies, doctors in US and so on, different stakeholders we have. The user base is entirely different. So how do you make sure this knowledge is in your team so that you deliver a quality product, you support a quality product? Again, it goes back to how do we maintain our documentation, knowledge base, lunch and learn sessions, breakfast sessions, make any opportunity that is available to bring that collaborative ways of working and bring that knowledge gap closer. And then this is another challenge when I looked at quality engineering delivery, conflicting timelines. So as I said, we work with the 15 to 20 agile teams. Every team has got their own priorities. Every team has got their own deliverables. How on the earth we are going to support end-to-end business? So the one thing which we do in our organization for the last 1.5 years, 2 years is we run a wider scrum of scrums every month. And we invite Scrum Master or Dev Lead to that meeting and make sure what they're doing in the next a week or two time. What is the dependency on the external technology teams? So this was lacking, but the process of running this collaborative meeting really improved the dependencies identification earlier in the life cycle. So earlier people were just firefighting, oh, this integration is not working, go and talk to that team and so on. So now we are making sure we identify those integrations or dependencies earlier in the life cycle and we bring that quality. Again, this is another one. With the diverse technological landscape, we have a very complex test environments end-to-end. The legacy systems and the latest cloud systems, how do you make sure we have a test environment is available for testing end-to-end process? So the best way is, I've got an environments lead who is dedicated to support this activity, to identify all the dependencies, make sure we work out that approach. Otherwise, I know it's really difficult. Again, goes back to what I said, quality is everybody's responsibility, but when you leave it in the Wild West, nobody is going to care. Everybody thinks, oh, the other person is doing it. I'm kind of, that's where the practice, we need to embed that. And the QA lead, environments lead, who is working with these 15, 20 teams and identifying all the end-to-end integration dependencies and bringing that landscape. So a strategic environment is really important, and it helped us running complex business processes before we go live. And again, I'm sure everyone is aware of this term. So we use so much of personal data in our environments historically. So these regulations and data requirements put us so much restrictions onto end-to-end testing. How do we address this? So if I use anonymization, pseudonymization process in one team, that is not maintaining the integrity with the other team. So what works for you? So there were few options we looked at, either go and buy a tool in the market or custom build a framework which we can use it for end-to-end testing. So we ended up with building our own process where we take some of our data from production generally, and this was agreed with the GDPR program regulation team, and run the process across all the teams before they put it into test environment, and that still maintains the data integrity across the test environments so that end-to-end testing can happen as it was happening. And again, automation we looked at. With this complex environment or complex technological landscape, no tool in the market would fit end-to-end. So build your own framework or see the framework which works for your business purpose and address those automation issues. So in summary, when you're looking at large-scale agile organizations, I'm sure everyone is working in agile at the moment. Is there anyone not working in agile? No. Okay. One. So when you're working in agile, it's always a miss that you don't have proper quality engineering managers or quality owners. So make sure you have that quality engineering team or manager at the enterprise level. Or test management or test engineering make it necessary for your organization, right? And embed these quality principles into your teams. So the guidelines, checkpoints, or reviews, all of these things, make sure your teams follow those processes. If you don't have quality engineers in your team, at least all the developers, if they follow certain standards, you achieve your quality from the beginning. And when you have quality engineers embedded into your team, empower them to ask right questions, empower them to use the right tools for which really fit the purpose. Don't just do automation for the sake of automation, as I said. Look at your business outcome and then use it. Always make sure your team is up to date with the latest technologies. Otherwise, you build a framework today, it's not usable tomorrow. So the market is changing so rapidly. Make sure your teams are following the trends. Send your team to some conferences or webinars. There's so much knowledge available in the market, so make sure your team is up to date in the technologies. The key one is metrics, is always measure necessary metrics. Do not measure metrics for the sake of measuring. Use the metrics to drive the improvements. Don't use the metrics to demotivate your team. Use the metrics to drive the improvements. And the last one is embed accountability into your teams. So make sure your teams are adhering to your quality principles. So as a quality engineering manager, I know if you have 50 team members, it's really difficult to convince 50 technologists at the same time. So you pick champions, right? 5 or 6 people, and convince those 6 people, they automatically convince the remaining 50 people. So that's the strategy I use. So my line is, I want to transform my teams inspecting the quality into influencing the quality. So I want my quality engineers to influence the quality right from the beginning, not just inspecting at the end. As a quality engineer, I just wanted to close with this one. So Steve Jobs said, it doesn't matter how hard you work, customers always look at how good you have delivered. Thank you.